Good evening and welcome to yet another special edition of Special Assignment. We are literally counting down the days to the ANC's elective conference, just 5 days to go. And with those 5 days to go, the ANC has been facing internal battles that have turned fatal, as well as court battles. And tonight, to make sense of it all, I will be introducing the guests that I have at this moment, and that is the professors themselves, to try and make sense of the ANC's internal politics, as well as the court battles that have been going on. We have the professors here. But of course, if you want to be part of the discussion, you can obviously send us your tweets, that is at SABC News Online, or you can send us your WhatsApp videos to 081 732 8421. But first, we start in the Free State, where that province's conference is currently underway. I was there yesterday all the way into the evening. The conference started about 10 hours late. And today a new development is out that 32% of the branches in the Free State are contesting this province's elective conference, and saying that not all due processes were followed and they're heading to court. Let's take a look at what's happening at this moment.
Nominations for the provincial executive were scheduled to start at 9 a.m., but delegates have been waiting and singing. The PEC says the delay has nothing to do with events in Bloemfontein.
The African National Congress must be able to conduct and conclude its business. It can never be a never-ending process. Ultimately, people have got to internalize the fact that there must be outcomes of a democratic process.
Branch general meetings that elected presidential candidates for the December conference are at the center of the standoff in the province, and the Deputy Provincial Secretary, Thabo Manyoni, is still absent.
He has not received any apology from the Deputy Chair of the ANC. In fact, I heard it from some of you, my colleagues, when you said, we know for a fact that the Deputy Chair is not attending conference. And I didn't say anything, because in terms of the ANC tradition, that's an internal matter. You know why you are interested in one person not attending a meeting of so many people. But what we can confirm on record, is that the Deputy Chair was part of the Provincial Executive Committee that took a decision that, as a result of the court case, the provincial conference is no longer proceeding as planned by another court judgment. It has been reconvened to sit as from yesterday.
The provincial chair and premier, Ace Magashule, members of the PEC and NEC convener, David Mahlobo, said 28 of the 29 BGM reruns ordered by the Bloemfontein High Court were done, and the conference is not in contempt of court. Magashule is expected to be nominated uncontested. Ntakwana Ngatani, SABC News, Paris.
Well, let's try and make sense of all this. We have Professor Kondlo as well as Professor Boysen joining us this evening. Is it a surprise at all? In listening to Ace Magashule last night, he said that they faced 8 court cases, and this is the 9th court case. Let's start with you, Professor Kondlo.
Yes, I think the situation is quite difficult in the Free State. And it appears like Ace, the chairperson of the province, just wants to move on. And the impression you get, I have spoken to a couple of people in the province there, is that, look, the issues of dissatisfaction are quite long-standing. Firstly, there's always been issues about his style of leadership, which many see as quite autocratic, if not bullying, too firm and confrontational. And secondly, is the state of branches in the province itself. There's always been problems with the branches in the Free State. And this is actually coming to the surface in a big way in the run-up to this conference.
Professor Boysen, Professor Kondlo uses the word autocratic. And you look at Ace Magashule, was elected in 1992 as chairperson and remains chairperson. And if that's his style of leadership, how has it been that he survived for so many years?
You know, it has really been political maneuvering and strategizing. He has really been a strongman in that province. And he systematically builds up his constituencies. And that's also why we see many divisions within branches, because people are trying to get rid of him, but he has so many of his own people entrenched in those branches. And so to the extent that he can rule over the province. And it's really reminiscent of what we see at national level and Jacob Zuma's kind of entrenchment. And Ace Magashule is really here. He also acts as part of the Premier League, and they have cross-provincial reinforcement. So it is systematic political work that makes that happen.
And ultimately now there's this pushback. I was actually Googling earlier on, and I saw an article from back in 2012 where he said that I will be elected unopposed. Last night he said exactly the same thing, that he will be elected uncontested. But there is this factor, and that factor is called Thabo Manyun. Is it a surprise that now we see that there is this pushback against Ace Magashule's way of governance?
Not at all. It has been long in the coming. And we can remind ourselves almost exactly 5 years ago, when the Constitutional Court ruled in the middle of Mangaung Conference that the Free State delegates' votes won't count. They had been voting on a different color ballot, and their votes could be extracted. It didn't affect the ultimate outcome there. But this year around, it may be a different picture, and should it be overruled, and should the Free State be forced not to have their delegates there, to withdraw their delegates, you know, that can really spill over into the national conference. Those visuals you had just now really create the spectre of destabilization of a national conference.
Professor Conley, just quickly before we go to this ad break, considering that this court case is coming, and do you think that the conference will actually be happening?
It's a difficult one.
It's a very difficult one, I know.
It's a difficult one, but by the look of things, I think Mr. Magashule is likely to just push ahead, force matters, and if that happens, and the Free State delegates at the conference are accorded a voting status, I'm telling you, really, it's gonna lead to many legal challenges about the conference, the national conference itself.
It'll be interesting actually to see whether that national conference will be going ahead, considering what's happening inside the party, not only the political battles, but also the killings that has been taking place in KwaZulu-Natal. So we'll go to a quick ad break, and when we come back, we'll have a focus on what's happening in KwaZulu-Natal with regards to this, these political killings that have been taking place. And of course, if you want to watch this program online, you can do that on our Facebook page as well as on our YouTube channel, that is SABC Digital News. Let's go to a quick ad break. Well, yes, we continue with our discussion around the ANC's elective conference. 5 days to go to that elective conference. And the question is, will it happen? And when that conference happens, who will be delivering the final address? Who will be that successful candidate that succeeds President Jacob Zuma? But first, let's go to KwaZulu-Natal. The ANC in KwaZulu-Natal will be bringing the largest number of delegates. KwaZulu-Natal remains the largest ANC province with 870 delegates, albeit that 104 delegate decline compared to 2012. The province has been experiencing multiple political killings, which led to the setting up of the Morana Commission. Lindiwe Mpanza has prepared this insert.
The ANC in KwaZulu-Natal has suffered the loss of yet another prominent member in the province. Deputy Chairperson Khaya Thobela of the party's Harry Gwala region was shot at his home on Thursday.
ANC councillor has been gunned down in southern KwaZulu-Natal. 39-year-old Mduduzi Chibase was shot and killed as he arrived home at Ogugwini last night.
This week started with the news of the passing of KZN ANC councillor Sindiso Magaka after succumbing to a reported politically linked attack about a month ago.
This morning, the ANC Youth League's deputy secretary in the Moses Mabhida region was shot in his Howick home.
ANC members make up the majority of political killings in KwaZulu-Natal. Recently, in late November, former ANC branch chairperson Lungisani Mnguni was gunned down near Pietermaritzburg. It's reported that the 34-year-old was ambushed while on his way to deliver food supplies to a local school. He was the third leader to be killed in the area. Mnguni was a delegate going to the ANC's national conference.
The branch of Comrade Mnguni nominated Mama Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma to be the president of the ANC, and the branch gave Mnguni a responsibility of taking that mandate and go and influence other branches in the region, of which we have seen him doing that. So no way where Comrade Mnguni in the conference was going to do something else.
3 days after Mnguni's murder, ANC Youth League Deputy Secretary in the Moses Mabhida region, Sembiso Mhlongo, seen here at the crime scene where Mnguni died, was also gunned down. It's believed unknown men posing as police knocked at his door and shot him. He later succumbed to his injuries. Mhlongo was also a delegate heading to the conference.
There is an element of political motive in all these killings.
Mhlongo had been married for 6 months before being killed. His family didn't want to speculate on any motive.
He was heavily involved in politics his whole life, but with that said, we don't have any reason to believe this was politically motivated. And until we know for sure what the motive was, we can't speculate as family.
At the province's Provincial General Council last week, Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma emerged as the preferred presidential candidate. But what has it been like campaigning in such a politically charged environment?
It has been quite a delicate situation trying to navigate our way throughout the province under such harsh and very hostile conditions. Hostile not from external forces, but from within. You know, we are at a time where, as members of the ANC, the way in which we dislike each other, it's like arch enemies of the worst kind.
KwaZulu-Natal has a history of political violence dating back to the 80s. Professor Paulus Zulu says the tendency to eliminate opposition violently tends to be historical in our country.
In the past, it was the elimination of an ideological opposition. Today, there is an element of competition over resources and positions. The people that eliminate others themselves want to occupy the positions that are in contest.
The pattern in these killings is that there's clearly been, in many cases, surveillance of people's movements. They know when they're leaving home, they know where they live, they know when they go to work, they know when they're dropping their kids at school. So what you're looking at is people who've had training of some sort in surveillance. They're skilled marksmen because the killings, a lot of the killings are execution style.
In October last year, Premier Willie Zimchunu set up the Murane Commission, tasked with investigating the underlying causes of political killings in KwaZulu-Natal, because the province accounts for the bulk of political killings in the country. Amongst other things, the commission heard that the notorious Cleveland's hostel in Umlazi is a haven for alleged hitmen reportedly carrying out hits for politicians and criminals.
What has been allowed to happen at Cleveland's has actually had an impact on the entire province, on the entire region, because hitmen that are at Cleveland's at the moment that were brought in originally around 2014, they have since been used in taxi violence and also in some of the political killings. So it's unless Cleveland's is dealt with, I don't believe that there's going to be much success with any of the other investigations to do with the political killings.
At the beginning of the year, when we knew that there was going to be a conference, there was fear in the circle of people that take a great interest in these things that some amount of violence will take place. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's not unexpected.
A report by Salga found that 43 councillors were killed in the country between 2011 and 2016. Most of these killings took place in KZN. However, tensions in the province are also heightened by the current court case, which threatens the position of the KZN ANC PEC.
Well, 22 killings since 2011, from 2011 to 2016. That's a lot. Well, earlier on in the evening, we spoke to the ANC's Treasurer General, Zweli Mkhize, about the recent political killings in KwaZulu-Natal. You'd remember that Zweli Mkhize is also the former chairperson of the ANC in that province.
You know, to be honest, I really don't know. It's a very sad one, Sindiso Magaqwa is just as young as my own children. Apart from him being a leader, it's a very sad one for us to lose young leaders like that. I know him very well, and he's one young fellow who has had lots of energy and was really a very good leader and very promising, as it were. Very outspoken, and he's a fellow who couldn't say no to you. If he wanted to raise the issue, that's how he was. However, we can't tell what has happened in the process, and we have to go deeply into this matter, and whether the statements that are being made. I mean, I see someone was saying it was about factions, someone before had said it was about corruption. Whatever the reason, there's not enough reasons for us to accept that there was a reason, a basis on which he could have been killed. There was no reason. So we need to work together to firstly ensure that there's a strong team of police that go in there, and those who are there need to be strengthened, and those who are there, we need to make sure we work with communities to help that, they must support them, and we've made that call. But even inside the organization, we need to go in again. The leadership in the province has gone in there to separate out on political matters to see whether there's anything that can be found that should need to be solved to actually stop this kind of problem. As to what it is, we have to find out when the
As national leadership, how can you say we don't know what it is? Because it is a party problem, and nobody gets killed and nobody knows what's going on. 22 people have died, I believe, since about 2011, which makes it the worst area, KwaZulu-Natal. It's happening in other parts of the country. But how is it that you can't know? It's either you are failing in leading by not being able to get people on the ground to tell you these stories.
Yes, it depends how the crime has been committed. It also depends on the level of investigation. It also depends on the environment around which the police are investigating. But we must say we have to find out what happened. At the end of the day, yes, it is not a good image for us when you see those kinds of things happening. But at the same time, I think it's important to say it's at the end of it is a criminal matter. The police have to investigate, and there shouldn't be anything political about anyone who gets found, even if there might be, members of an organization, even if there might be leaders. But once it comes to killing, it's a crime, and it's criminal. It has to be exposed as such.
So hand on heart, at Luthuli House, you have no idea who's doing this killing?
No, look, it has to be with the police. The police have to give us. I think we need to be very careful that political parties don't have the same capacity to investigate as the police have, and it's important for us to always give the police the support and the independence to be able to investigate. And of course, we have to go in there and ensure that there's enough support for the police and for the community to be able to come out and give us information. But we have to make sure that the police are the ones that are investigating, and it has to be dealt with. And the message for us from the leadership, the message is to say we condemn this, and we say no, none of our members must be found to be responsible for it, and that will act if we find it, but also they must go all the way out to help the police to investigate and give all the information that is necessary.
You agree that the party is not unified? In 2011, when I first spoke to President Zuma, he said, I asked him directly, is your party unified? And he said yes, very confidently. And yet, at that stage, as far back as then, people were already saying this party's in trouble. 2017, we see it in the killing fields, and we see it in the manner in which the campaigns have been happening. Maybe not the leaders, but certainly the supporters have been quite divisive in the way that they're behaving. So the question now becomes, whose fault is it that the party has become so divided? I'm looking to you as the leadership. You needed to manage this. Have you failed?
No, I wouldn't say we have failed, but I think we must all take responsibility for what happens in the organization. If at the moment we have divisions that are showing in public, but we believe that those divisions have to be managed. Some of them arise from the way we manage issues. Some of them are not as fundamental and ideological as to really call them fundamental differences. So these are issues of how we're managing issues, and so I think they can still be managed and contained. But yes, if you look back over the years, there are tendencies that we have identified that are creeping into the organization that we need to uproot, and we've said so, and all that we need to be able to do is to ensure that as the conference comes, it addresses all those issues and we uproot the causes of the divisions. But the ANC has not always been a divided organization, but the differences of opinion are allowed in the organization. So it's a matter of the degrees of the differences. Right now, I think we're having quite a lot of things with the court cases and so on. I think that we need to do a lot more to actually contain this and bring back party discipline, and also deal with the issues that fundamentally create differences among the members that are not well settled within the party.
Professor Boysen and Professor Kondo, I saw you both gasp. How could he have said that? I don't know.
It is unbelievable. I just heard a string of political cliches. This is one of the top political leaders in a country, and not even acknowledging that this is political. Yes, it's crime as well. Yep. It is political crime. And it runs at this interface of ANC structures and local government structures. We know that, and we have heard so much evidence at the Morani Commission. There's not the findings yet, but there's so much that is known on the ground. And of course, it has gone hand in hand with the growth of the ANC in the province in the last decade. Before, it was acrimonious interactions between the ANC and the IFP largely. And that is with the growth of the ANC. That has all become internalized within the ANC. But the divisions, the factions, the acrimony, hostilities have not gone away. But it goes into the positions of patronage and so on, like some of the analysts and researchers there have spoken about. And there is the drastic, desperate need for political action to stop that in its tracks. That is not compatible with a democracy. So it was quite shocking that Zweli Mkhize doesn't own up, that he doesn't acknowledge what the exact nature of the problem is, and that the ANC and its structures are very often central to those.
Yeah, Professor Kondo, the strange thing is listening to Zweli Mkhize and saying that we take responsibility as the leadership. But what does that mean when you find an environment, which was described by one of the ANC members, that the environment is so hostile that you can't even campaign for your own candidate? This is now campaign for your own candidate within the ANC. We're not speaking about a candidate of a different organization.
Adrian, what it shows is that I think the ANC is in a serious crisis. The cause of the crisis are quite multiple. The first one, I think the issue of leadership. is coming out very strongly as a challenge in the ANC. And secondly, the political cultures that have been accepted within the ANC are beginning to cause a problem. Remember, the ANC, in KZN in particular, it absorbed a lot of people who I would say they changed coat from being IFP members and are now in the ANC. And they come into the ANC, and the ideology in the ANC is so inchoate and incoherent.
Do you then blame them for the killings that are taking place, for the hostile environment?
No. I'm trying to say the political culture is not rooted on any coherent ideology, which everybody subscribes to. I think it's one of the problems the ANC is facing. And secondly, the issue of general ill-discipline, competition for access to resources using the positions. In fact, the moral position, the moral condition of the ANC as an organization is so dilapidated.
Well, let's go to a quick ad break, and when we return, we'll continue with our conversation with the two professors about the state of the party heading into the ANC's elective conference. Of course, 5 days to go to that ANC's all-important elective conference, and I believe that both the professors will be there at the ANC's elective conference. Of course, you remember that you can be part of this discussion by sending us your tweets at SABC News Online. Let's go to a quick ad break.
Our stories.
How do I begin?
Our lives. When all seems to fail, we will raise our voices a bit louder for our justice.
Well, I went into absolute shock. My whole body was shaky. I couldn't hold a phone, but there he was. I couldn't believe the nonchalant that they were still in the area 2 weeks later.
And in times when the justice system is not able to help us with our individual battles,
I'm willing to do anything. What are you doing? Nothing. Feeling sorry for yourself? No, it's not an option.
These are our stories on Cutting Edge Channel 404.
Welcome back. You're still watching this special edition of Special Assignment. My name is Aldrin Simpier, and of course, we are heading to that all-important ANC's elective conference. Before that ad break, we were discussing the situation in KwaZulu-Natal, quite specifically focusing on the political killings that have been taking place. And one of the questions is, if you look at Zweli Mkhize's comments earlier on and you ask yourself that this is a man who wants to be president of the ANC, but also president of the country, but does he really instill confidence? And how is it that Zweli Mkhize, who was the chairperson of the party in KwaZulu-Natal, did not give concrete answers? I was even wondering at some point when I was watching that interview, could it be that there are some ANC leaders who are withholding information that comes to political killings?
You know, actually, it is possible, but I actually think it is just so unlikely that a leader at that level of Zweli Mkhize does not know. There is, I think, protectionism. People know too much, but they're afraid that if they reveal too much, they can stir up more problems or endanger the ANC's position in the province. There are always these layers of political agendas between actually doing something in a way of doing something about these killings. It is really killing. A word killing fields is not an overstatement, and it's been going on for many, many years. And it is not getting better. We actually are seeing an escalation in the last few years.
Professor Kondlo, looking at the 7 candidates that we have, and all of them contesting to become ANC president, are they making enough noise around this issue? because this is not just an issue that faces the ANC during the ANC's elective conference, but we saw that happen last year as well during the local government elections.
Aldrin, I don't think they are making enough noise about this issue. I'll tell you why. You see, I was actually surprised when Mr. Mkhize, Dr. Mkhize spoke, because, look, they seem to rely on police investigations. As far as I understand, the ANC has a research department. And one of the functions of the research department is to look into trends, map out trends of violence in provinces such as KZN. Because the violence there started as far back as 1984, Inkatha UDF conflict. And after 1990, it was Inkatha versus the ANC. And the tendency since 1984 has been to eliminate your political opponent, you see, physically eliminate, you see. So this has been there, and the ANC's research department should be the one which actually provides data, besides the police investigation, so that leadership can make informed noises, can raise with the police questions from a point of information. This does not seem to be happening.
And it just can't be that it's ideological differences that would lead to people of the same party killing each other.
No, it's access to and control over resources, positions. And that is the whole business that operates at that local government and district government levels. And we have heard, this may be anecdotal, but people whose relatives had been killed in some of these incidents have been saying the people who have been responsible are the ones who sing the biggest praises at some of the funerals. And so it's a huge phenomenon in South African politics. It has happened in many parts of the country, not with the intensity and the frequency that we have in KwaZulu-Natal, but we can think back about a decade, more than a decade and a half ago now. Nobin Ngombane, a prominent figure in the Free State government, who was assassinated by the door of his house, opening a door to people who had been knocking. Such a typical measure there. We have seen northwest Pretoria spilling over into Pretoria areas. It is a broad phenomenon, and it is not the way to resolve that contest for control over resources.
Professor Kondlo, without sounding alarmist on this one, looking at what's happening in the ANC in KZN and looking at what has happened in the ANC in the Eastern Cape, the violence that took place, should we expect the same thing to happen at the ANC's national conference? Also considering that we are out of while the Free State conference is still taking place, and ahead of the conference, the chairs were tied to each other to ensure that the delegates do not use the chairs as weapons.
Yeah. Aldrin, I think from a security point of view, I don't think there'll be any fights inside the conference itself. But I imagine probably three scenarios about what is likely to happen at that conference. Yeah. The first scenario is a scenario whereby the conference starts but collapses. And the collapse of the conference could be due to ill discipline between competing factions and disagreements. Heated disagreements that make it difficult to proceed, you see, and some people threatening legal action. That's the first scenario. The second scenario is whereby you see the ANC walking in there and trying to forge an unprincipled unity, whereby they persuade each other that he or she who does not win, especially for the position of president, agrees to be nominated and stand as deputy president. And they make sure that people who appear to be coming from different slates, it's either they deputize for each other or they lead a particular portfolio. I say it's unprincipled unity because that is going to stifle the actual operation of the organization and can actually even spill into governance of the whole country. Because these guys, they don't trust each other. These guys, others have long histories of competition and jealousy that you can trace back from exile.
Well, it sounds as though that you're also speaking of a different organization during the elections, that you're not speaking of members of the same political party.
The third scenario is whereby we have a smooth conference and Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma or Cyril Ramaphosa wins, but after the conference, you see factions of the one who has lost.
I was actually saying that if the year of O.R. Tambo was so quote-unquote lit, imagine the year of Mandela, when Mandela is supposed to be turning 100 years next year. We expect that the ANC will declare next year the year of Nelson Mandela. Let's just quickly look at the tweet that has come through. You can send us your tweets, of course, on... you can send us your tweet at SABC News Online. Okay, here are these chairs. This is actually a picture that I took yesterday. Here are the chairs at the ANC's elective conference. This is in the Free State, and you can see that they have this cable ties right at the bottom of the chair.
You need to take their own scissors.
Well, listen, if you want to be part of this discussion, yes, you can continue to send us through your tweets. That is at SABC News Online. And please, you can follow the discussion on our YouTube channel. That is SABC News channel on YouTube, as well as on our Facebook page. For now, it is a quick ad break. And when we come back, we discuss what's been happening in Mpumalanga. Is that indeed the province of unity? Is Mpumalanga the kingmakers, as they supposedly say they are?
Today on Rights and Recourse, we will unpack the new traditional court model.
The idea of the bill is not to overregulate, to basically set the principles.
The most important aspect of this bill is that it understands that customary law, by its nature, is consensual. That I have a right to affiliate, I have a right, therefore, to opt in, and I have a right to opt out.
The opt-out provision is basically one that you've got to respect the court in the sense of, if you've been summoned, you've got to tell the clerk of the court at least that you're not willing to attend.
The challenge that I would like to throw to the Department of Justice, it has to come up with mechanisms of ensuring that people who exercise their right to opt out or to opt in are not in any way victimized.
Hashtag Rights with Dumila Matez on legal issues every Sunday at 2 o'clock Central African Time.
Well, as the ANC's elective conference draw near, Mpumalanga is a province to watch. It surprised many when some delegates voted with unity instead of choosing amongst the 7 contesting candidates. But Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma got 123 votes, while the ANC Deputy President, Cyril Ramaphosa, got 117. A margin of just 6 votes still means Mpumalanga may be up for grabs. Let's just take a quick look at this insert.
Earlier this year, the ANC chairperson in Mpumalanga, Didi Mabuza, embarked on his unity campaign. He said the aim was to create unity in a divided and fractured ANC. At an event in his province, he lobbied the support of premiers from other provinces.
The question of unity is not about individuals, it's about all of us. It's about the country. So we must suppress our individual ambitions and whatnot and look at the country. The country must come first.
In the beginning, Mabuza was reported to be in Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma's faction.
He was at first a member of the Premier League, which was this group of provincial premiers who were pushing Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma. He then began to change sides, not to Cyril Ramaphosa, but to say, look, the ANC will lose the 2019 election if it's not united. So Mr. Mabuza has been presenting himself for much of the last few months as the unity candidate.
The ANC in Mpumalanga is expected to send more than 700 delegates to the elective conference. Mabuza sees himself as a kingmaker with powers to influence how delegates will vote.
Despite his claims that he's all-powerful in the province is divided. Matthew Sposa, who is a candidate for ANC president, although not one that's getting many votes, he is based in Mpumalanga. He has opposed Didi Mabuza throughout. The South African Communist Party in Mpumalanga has traditionally opposed him.
Some say Cyril Ramaphosa dealt a blow to his campaign by excluding Mabuza in his slate, but others believe Ramaphosa's support in the province remains firm and expect some in the unity votes to endorse him. Mabuza is accused of being opportunistic.
It is not a unit. Like I'm saying that it is an opportunistic unity. What he wants, then he wants to be a deputy president of the ANC. If he's true, then about it, then the unit that is project, he must stand up and say, I am not available then for any position in the ANC, you know, even in the NEC. Now we'll believe him that he's talking about the unit.
Analysts say Mabuza was rewarded with the premiership of the province after he supported President Jacob Zuma in the Polokwane conference in 2007. Mpumalanga ANC has seen reports of political killings and corruption, with the premier himself alleging he was poisoned. Now there's suspicion about how the province drastically increased the number of its delegates.
There is no way that Mpumalanga then would have jumped it then from where it was, then last conference and then our number 2 now. No, there's no way. I can tell you now that there's a manipulation of processes. The unfortunate part now, we cannot prove it, but we know for a fact that now there's a manipulation of processes.
Experts say Mabuza has played his cards close to his chest, preferring to adopt a wait-and-see attitude before choosing the candidate of his choice.
We are yet to see the chairperson of the province, Didi Mabuza. We understand, though, there is another ANC candidate, presidential candidate in the province.
Despite featuring on Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma's slate as her preferred candidate for deputy president, Mabuza was conspicuously absent when she campaigned in his own backyard.
Viva Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, viva! Unity in the ANC, unity! Viva Didi Mabuza, viva!
Our request for an interview with Mr. Mabuza to understand his unity project was unsuccessful. We also tried to source comment from the Inhlanzeni regional chairperson, who apparently supports the unity project. He confirmed the interview but failed to show up. We asked ordinary people of Mbombela about their thoughts on who they think should be the next president of the ANC.
Obvious, Cyril Ramaphosa. Why? Because as a deputy president, the culture of the ANC says so.
We can't give a leadership to Ms. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, where else it's in the same house. So we'll be stuck in a very same rules.
I think the next president of the ANC will be Cyril Ramaphosa.
At the provincial elective conference, the so-called consensus leadership of unity seemed to have been endorsed, with the highest nominations of 223, but the ANC Electoral Commission nullified them as abstentions.
Why can't unity be the winning position?
The Electoral Commissioner was firm on the decision.
The other section does not have a name. It is an abstention as far as we in the Electoral Commission are concerned.
Dr. Dlamini Zuma walked away with 123 nominations compared to Ramaphosa's 117, which makes NDZ Mpumalanga's preferred candidate by a margin of 6 votes.
Comrades, we are saying our people all over the country have been watching this. And comrades, I urge you as delegates that are going to that conference to look at the diagnostic report that was submitted to the policy conference.
Presidential hopeful Matthew Sposa has challenged the outcome of the Mpumalanga PGC, demanding a rerun. He alleges Mabuza manipulated the nominations and persuaded people to nominate unity. And Kolisi Hobe alleges that vote buying in the province is rife.
Even those delegates that they are buying now, we know that people have been offered then 20,000 rand then for vote. You know, we're not going to allow them that. We have told them the people that no, take the money, use then the money. But you know, when you go then to vote, you must vote then to save then the ANC. The only person that is going to save then the ANC is Sarah Maposa, nobody else.
Yeah, but you see the point.
Professor Stephen Friedman says if the final outcome of the election results are contested, Mabuza's unity ticket might hamper his chances of becoming deputy president of the party, which is ultimately his goal.
The only deal which may work is if a third person emerges who is not on either slate as the presidential candidate. And the obvious candidate that people talk about in that context is William Keys, the Treasurer General, which would mean that neither Dlamini Zuma nor Ramaphosa became president.
Well, just looking at that, professors, is when you look at what's happening currently in the province and this grand plan that it seems that Didi Mabuza had come up with, and you had the chairpersons of various provinces who came out to Mpumalanga, and there was this show of force, but it seems as though that it has collapsed, that his grand plan didn't work.
Yes, we saw at least 4 premiers coming together around that, but the premiers of all other provinces that were involved with him at that forum have indeed gone ahead and have motivated and their provinces nominate specific candidates. Of course, it can lead to debates on the conference floor. It can be one of those contested issues of the first day, whether they should negotiate a slate, a unity slate, that could still be negotiated on the conference floor. And we saw in Mangaung 5 years ago that there were efforts to get a unity slate and offer Kgalema Motlanthe a deputy presidency position, which he declined, and then Cyril Ramaphosa slipped in there. Those were conference floor negotiations. But specifically in this context here, I think Didi Mabuza's campaign was really a failure. Also, and in this process, we forget, if we look at the total number of branches that Mpumalanga has, besides the 2 count tallies to the 2 main candidates, and then to, as these called, Comrade Unity, there are 274 branches in those tallies, besides them, that have not yet expressed their vote, their preferences, their nominations, their branch general meetings had not been run, etc. So it was a huge backlog last week when these tallies were arrived at. So, and that is bigger, that block of 273 is bigger than the total combined of Ramaphosa and Dlamini Zuma in that province. And that, besides the unity, so-called unity, can really sway that province in any direction.
Yeah, Professor Kondlo, do you think that the unity strategy would change the dynamics in terms of giving the province, Mpumalanga, more power, leverage power?
Alden, the question is how united is the unity slate? That is the first thing that we don't know. Because in my understanding, some of the people of the branch that are counted in the unity slate are not necessarily loyal to Mabuza. You see? So in other words, this is a gray area that we don't exactly know. And I hope things will be clearer at the conference itself.
Professor Friedman, actually, did you want to add something?
Yes. So just to watch that nomination space for a deputy president of the ANC, Didi Mabuza is standing very strong, irrespective of unity or whatever. He's standing very strongly in those nominations. He and Lindiwe Sisulu are the 2 whose names will be on the ballot. And he even had strong nomination support in a province like the Eastern Cape, which generally came out in favor of Ramaphosa, but Didi Mabuza, just on the count so far, given my other argument that they are still incomplete, big missing chunks, but he could come in by stealth as the next deputy president of the ANC, and we know there will, the next time around, be an election for a deputy president. It is not an automatic shoe-in, but that person comes with a built-in advantage in that race. And I think that is one of the silent elections that are happening now. The other one is the election for the NEC that would be there to maintain and protect a next president. So that gap really has to be watched, so the ANC can end up with a few interesting surprises. Yeah.
Okay, let's just quickly look at some of these tweets that have been coming through. We've got a tweet here from Walter who says, Mr. Unity, you are one of the people who are killing my ANC. Do you deviate from supporting, or why do you deviate from supporting your deputy to take over from Zuma? You have fielded to divide CR17 support, but it backfired on you. I lost respect for you. Ditiro Mutlamachi says, why provinces supporting Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, I guess, are embroiled in court battles. And that's the issue, right? It's what happens to Didi Mabuza. Didi Mabuza will certainly become, probably, the president, deputy president rather, of the party, considering the number of solid votes and nominations that he's received so far. And I was actually saying to someone that if you make the argument that the deputy president of the party must become the president of the party, that means that Didi Mabuza could be in line to become the president of the ANC. Well, that's if the party, as some cynics would say, if the party still exists to beyond that. Let's go to a quick ad break, and when we come back, we'll continue our discussion ahead of the ANC's elective conference.
We make sure to be where news is happening,
both locally and globally. For the latest business news, stay with us.
From South Africa to the world, we've got all your latest sporting news.
Don't miss our weather updates every hour.
Stay tuned to News Today, Monday to Friday, from 3 to 5:30 p.m. here on SABC News.
Welcome back to the special edition of Special Assignment. I'm Aldrin Simpier, and unfortunately we've ran out of time, so I'm going to ask the professors to quickly give us some closing remarks. 5 days to go to the ANC's elective conference. Your quick comments, Professor Boysen.
Three provinces that we've looked at tonight, KwaZulu-Natal, Free State, Mpumalanga, they are seriously kingmakers in this process. And it is each of these provinces is extremely problematic. So much of the worst faces of the ANC are evident in the politics of these provinces. We should just trust that the candidates will have the wisdom to ensure that this kind of king-making doesn't spell anything about the future of the ANC we will see after this conference.
Professor Kondlo, your closing remarks?
Well, the ANC has to make sure that that conference doesn't collapse. Mm-hmm. And we also hope that ANC members will accept whoever wins to be president. At the moment, it's difficult to tell. You can't say family, it's going to be Cyril, and you can't say it's going to be Nkosazana. It's very difficult to tell.
Someone was actually saying that should the ANC's elective conference collapse, that would mean that President Jacob Zuma will continue as the ANC president, and up until the time that the ANC is ready to elect a new president, then the party will have a different president. Unfortunately, we've come to the end of this program, of this today's special edition of Special Assignment, but you can continue to follow our special coverage of SABC News on the SABC News channel 404. That's tomorrow evening at 7 o'clock. We have an exclusive interview with one of the ANC's top officials, and that is Jessie Duarte, the Deputy Secretary General of the party, who's also received numerous nominations for her to retain that position, and I guess one nomination for her to become the Secretary General of the party. Meanwhile, our sister stations, Mhlobo Weneno, Kozi FM, Ligwala Gwala, and Ikwekwezi FM will be running a simulcast interview with Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa from 6 to 7 p.m. tomorrow. From all of us, it is good night, and thank you so much for being part of the show.